friends, veterans, family members, patriots. My name is Rich Luderman. I'm from Fox 2. I'm a veteran. I want to thank Alan Muskovitz for inviting me here today. Alan, you may know, is in Chicago with his son, so it would normally be Alan up here doing this whole bit, but a couple of weeks ago Alan called me and realized that there was a scheduling conflict, and I was happy to fill in for Alan. First things first, I want to thank some of our sponsors. The enlisted level sponsor is Dowling, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, and our 1-star level sponsor is Hodges Subaru. Now this memorial, we're going to be talking about it a lot today. We're going to be hearing about it. The best place to get current information about the memorial is on the website, Michigan WWII Memorial.org. You can like us on Facebook. There's a lot of information there and pictures, and we want you to post your memories of VJ Day, post your memories and pictures of what transpires here today, all of that again on our Facebook site. We are offering inscribed bricks, the brick cravers that will greet visitors as they enter the memorial. If you make payment today, cash, check, or credit card, we will give you a 25% discount. And you can send in your inscription later. But again, that's going to go on today. Please visit the headquarters, the HQ information tent. So we see a raise of a hand of the HQ information tent. There we go, there they're raising. That's where you want to be. You can also donate with your smartphone. Text WW2, the number 2, WW2 again, to 31996 and follow the directions. Click on the link provided as instructed. Also, you can join our email list. Text WW2 to 31996 and follow the directions. Reply with your email to join our mailing list. You can meet the sculptors and the Motor City maquettes, the 1/3 scale clay models of the statues, but it's certainly worth your time and a while to go over and see the smaller versions of what's going to be here on this site very, very soon. Progress is being made. Money raised today is going to go with the money already raised, and we're going to get this done. We're going to get it done soon, so young and old, the veterans of our greatest generation can see it live and in person. You know, yesterday, before I introduce Jim Ellison, the mayor of Royal Oak, I just want to tell you a story. Yesterday, I took my girls up to Tullis, Michigan, for a day of swimming. We had a wonderful time. The weather was just like it is here up in Tullis. But on the way, we stopped in Bay City, and we saw the USS Edson. Some of you may or may not know that there is a Vietnam-era destroyer sitting on the Saginaw River that is now a museum ship, the USS Edson in Bay City. And my kids and I, we paid a few bucks and we walked on the ship. You can see just about the entire ship from down below to up top. And there was a big poster, and it was a U.S. Navy poster from the old days. And it's the one thing that I remember about this trip to this destroyer yesterday, and I'm going to tell you what the poster said. It said, "Your U.S. Navy, life, liberty, and the pursuit of those who would threaten it." And it really stuck with me, and I made sure my girls read that, and they did. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of those who threaten it. So here we are today, giving thanks and recognition to men and women, volunteers, who gave so much so that we can be here today. I tell my children every time the Lions score a touchdown, I say thank a veteran. Every time we get to enjoy the Dream Cruise, I say thank a veteran. Every time the Tigers make the playoffs, I tell my girls, make sure you thank a veteran. Just about every part of our life, day to day,
how's this?
the freedoms we enjoy, we should give thanks to our veterans. Now I'm going to introduce Mayor Jim Ellison of Royal Oak. He's going to have some great words for us. Jim, come on up here.
You know, I got to admit that when you get a newsman up here and he mentions your name, then he says, "I have a story to tell you." We all get a little bit worried. I'm sorry, I'll get close. How's this? Is this better? I can't control the volume, I can control my voice. I want to welcome everybody to the city of Royal Oak. It's a big weekend for us. As we all know, yesterday we had the Dream Cruise, and believe it or not, overnight we got this place all cleaned up, and now here we are today, celebrating the end of the World War II, 70 years ago. I'm very honored that Royal Oak was chosen to have the World War II Memorial Legacy built in our town. I come from a family of many veterans. My dad and my uncles all served in World War II, both in the war in Europe and the war in the Pacific. And we're all very proud of them. Unfortunately, none of them are here with us anymore. But myself and my cousins continue to carry the mantle of proudly honoring our Ellison brethren that preceded us, and all the other families in Royal Oak and throughout the county and throughout the state and the country. And on behalf of the city of Royal Oak, I want to thank you for coming out today. And again, we are very proud to have the legacy being built in our city. Thank you.
Of course, before I leave today, I'm going to give you the forecast. I would be amiss if I didn't give you the forecast. Yesterday, thank goodness, the Dream Cruise went very well. No storms. Today we have a few fair weather cumulus clouds. See those big white cotton ball looking clouds? Those are called cumulus clouds. Fair weather clouds. So we're going to do just fine today. I'm going to introduce next Rob Price. And I have a little bio to read. Rob Price is Director of Targeted Outreach with Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency. The Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency, the MVAA, serves as the central coordinating point for Michigan veterans, connecting those who have served in the U.S. Armed Forces and their families to service and benefits throughout the state. Rob served in the U.S. Army for 37 years, starting in 1978, and is a Gulf War veteran. For historical reading, once again, Rob Price, Director, Targeted Outreach with the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency.
After 37 years of service, you need these. From the Office of the Governor. Dear friends, it is my pleasure to welcome you to Royal Oak for the 70th anniversary of VJ Day and the end of World War II at the future location of the Michigan World War II Legacy Memorial. Although I am unable to be present today, please know of my appreciation for all that has been done to make this event possible. On August 14, 1945, President Truman announced the news of the unconditional surrender of Japan to the Allied forces to the world. This announcement ignited celebrations throughout the entire world. Today is a day to remember the service and sacrifice that veterans gave, and thank them on behalf of the state of Michigan. Again, welcome. Please accept my wishes for an enjoyable event. Sincerely, Rick Snyder, Governor, State of Michigan.
Next is a special tribute read on behalf of Marty Nolenberg, State Senator 13th District, and Jim Townsend, State Representative 26th District, by Sean Chivatone, District Director for State Senator Marty Nolenberg. Sean, please.
If ever you have to use the restroom, I can push you right up over there where it is, and into the trees.
What is this for?
That's just to keep cool. She said put it on your wrist.
Thank you for having me today. It's an honor, it's truly an honor to be able to be here. On behalf of State Senator Marty Nolenberg and State Representative Jim Townsend, I bring a state tribute that I would like to briefly read to you. Let it be known that it is an honor and a privilege to commend the Michigan World War II Legacy Memorial as Michigan celebrates the 70th anniversary of victory over Japan. Here's a quote. The war situation has developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage. With these words, in perhaps the understatement of the 20th century, the Emperor of Japan announced his nation's unconditional surrender to Allied forces, marking the end of one of the greatest conflicts the world has ever known. What follows were 2 days of massive celebrations around the globe. In this special tribute, therefore, we honor and we celebrate our country, our military veterans. We thank all those who gave so much in this generation so that we can be here today. Signed by State Senator Marty Nolenberg and State Representative Jim Townsend. Thank you for having me.
Next, we have some VJ Day speeches, given by the officers of the Michigan WWII Legacy Memorial. First up, a reflection on World War II from Debbie Hollis, President. Debbie?
Hi everyone, can you all hear me? Yes. Okay. So on behalf of the Michigan WWII Legacy Memorial, thanks for coming out today to celebrate the 70th anniversary of victory over Japan and the end of World War II. I always like to start by having our World War II veterans be recognized. And although they're all very special and all deserve recognition, there's one particular gentleman in our audience today that I want to bring attention to. If I could ask John Simon, World War II veteran, to stand up. John was part of the Army Air Corps 25th Squadron, CBI, China, Burma, India, for 4 years. Last month, John turned 100. 2 days after his birthday, he went golfing. He still knows how to live. You set a good example for all of us, John. So can I have all the other World War II vets here today stand up and be recognized? Please stay standing. If there's any Rosies or homefront workers, also stand and be recognized. And now, any other veteran in our audience that has served our country, we ask you to also stand. We thank you all so much for your service. We can't thank you enough for what you do to keep us safe. We are all in your debt. You can be seated. I also want to thank our board of directors, Russell Levine, our vice president, Bev Kimbrough, our treasurer, Rick Sage, Al Muskovitz, Nate Strong, Mike Cameron, and Mary Ellen Soma. They're a very dedicated group of people who have spent years honoring the Michigan World War II generation, and I'm always proud to stand by their side. Our memorial partners of Michael Gordon of Mosif Gordon Architects, Michael Hall, our general contractor of Gordon B. Hall and Sons, and Larry Halbert and Tad McKillop, our sculptors. We certainly could never do this project without all of you guys. Thank you very much. So when I think about World War II, and I thought about what I wanted to talk to you about today, I realized quickly that there are so many things we could glean from it that it's really hard to narrow it down. I could talk about the gravity of it all, the sacrifice, the loss, the terror, or I could talk about the lessons learned from the greatest generation. Honor, respect, putting others before yourself, determination. There are so many things. But as I think about it, I'm not really sure we can fully appreciate any of those things until we understand the loss and truly understand the numbers. Although the total numbers are slightly disputed because records were not always able to be kept perfectly, the most agreed upon number of lives lost in World War II is 60 million people. Just think about that number for a minute. 60 million in the battlefields and as part of the unspeakable atrocities. Gone. But even that number is hard to relate to when it's scattered around the world. So for the sake of example today, I'm going to bring this number a little closer to home. Based on U.S. population statistics in 1945, you would have to eliminate the entire populations of the following states, and bear with me, the list is long, to completely demonstrate the impact of the World War II dead. Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. 16 states, 60 million people gone. This worldwide loss was equal to almost 1/2 of the United States population in 1945. If you think about the ripple effect on the home front and the number of family members who were affected by loss and long-term separation, life changes due to labor and industry demands for the war, daily commitments to the war effort, the numbers become truly staggering. So how do we now, 70 years later, deal with this? What do? Well, we preserve their legacy. That's what we do. From those who fought through the worst winter in 100 years in the Battle of the Bulge, to those who fought through the jungles of the Pacific, from those that witnessed the suicides of those that lived on the islands, to those who were forced into death marches, and those that fought in the island invasions, and from those on the home front who entered the workforce in order to keep the war machine running, to those who committed themselves daily to scrap drives, victory gardens, rationing, and more. The Michigan WWII Legacy Memorial will celebrate their story, the men and women of Michigan's greatest generation, their sacrifices and losses, their triumphs and glories, and their ultimate victory. Right here on this ground, we will one day dedicate the state's official tribute to its efforts of the Michigan WWII generation. It will honor sacrifice and celebrate freedom. It will be a tribute to the war front and the home front of Michigan. It will tell the very special story the Michigan has to tell, the who, what, and where of the Michigan story, and how we became known as the Arsenal of Democracy. 9 life-size bronze statues will depict forces on land, in the air, and on the sea, all unified by a Michigan theme. Pillars will represent service, sacrifice, labor, industry, commitment, and change. A walkable granite map of Michigan will show points of military, social, and industrial interest. It will be integrated into the fabric of the community. You can come here in the summer to have a picnic, or come in the winter to ice skate. We will have an online curriculum so that teachers and families can come and learn of the sacrifices made in order that we may have what we do today. To all of our World War II veterans and home front workers here today, we love you and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We will make every effort to tell your story respectfully and to preserve your legacy. I say this all the time, but the meaning never fades. Every single thing that we have today, we owe to you. We can never thank you enough.
Debbie, thank you very much. Next up is the Road to VJ Day. Russell Levine, Vice President. Russell?
Thank you very much. The following letter to Franklin Roosevelt was written August 2nd, 1939. Sir, I believe that it is my duty to bring to your attention the following facts. It may become possible to set up a nuclear reaction in a large mass of uranium. This new phenomenon would lead to the construction of extremely powerful bombs. Yours very truly, Albert Einstein. This letter also ominously reported related German activity implying their pursuit of a nuclear weapon. On October 4th, 1941, as a direct result of this letter, Roosevelt approves what is to become known as the Manhattan Project, later complemented with contributions from Canada and Great Britain. December 7th, 1941, Japan attacks Pearl Harbor and the United States enters the war. For a year and a half, Japan maintains the upper hand in the Pacific with additional attacks on Wake Island, the Philippines, and in the Coral Sea. The U.S. fights back, however, on land, at sea, but first in the air. On April 18, 1942, Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Doolittle stuns Tokyo with a daring raid of land-based B-25 bombers audaciously launched at sea from the deck of the USS Hornet. It is a tremendous morale boost to the U.S., but has no military significance in and of itself, or so it seems. In June 1942, shocked by Doolittle's raid, Japan seeks to shore up her Pacific perimeter. The timing appears favorable. American naval forces are vulnerable and depleted. However, anticipating an attack in the Midway Atoll, Admiral Chester Nimitz wisely orders just enough repairs to the heavily damaged USS Yorktown to make her seaworthy. Then, as if to repay his faith in her, dive bombers from the Yorktown eviscerate Japan's carrier fleet, catching them just as planes are refueling topside. Imperial naval and air forces never recover. Following the Battle of Midway, a 3-year island-hopping campaign to Japan begins. Despite this whimsical name, it's no game. Each step closer to the Japanese mainland brings increased intensity, bloodshed, and desperation. A few months later, in September of 1942, the Manhattan Project's director, General Leslie Groves, selects Dr. J. Robert Oppenheimer to lead its secret weapons lab. No one really knows where this will all lead. Physicist Edward Teller even speculates that an atomic bomb will ignite the atmosphere. February 19, 1945. U.S. Marines make landfall on Iwo Jima and sink ankle deep into the black sands in eerie silence. The tranquility is short-lived. When they're at point-blank range, the Japanese erupt the beaches into what Lieutenant General Holland Smith calls 7 kinds of hell. The Imperial Army fights to the death, fanatically. Less than 1% survive, and then only by accident. Flushed out of their network of underground caves with flamethrowers, they blow themselves up to inflict maximum damage. The battle finally tips in the Americans' favor as 5 exhausted Marines struggle to plant a flag on the summit of Mount Suribachi, creating the emblematic image of the Pacific Campaign. It took a trip to the moon and a generation to make as memorable and significant photograph of that flag. Let me say that another way. We had to leave the planet to make a bigger statement. On October 1st, 1945, the 77th Infantry Division waged ashore on Okinawa, a dress rehearsal for Operation Downfall, the invasion of the Japanese home islands. 1 month later, on May 8, 1945, as the Allies celebrate Victory in Europe, or VE Day, some scientists on the Manhattan Project privately questioned the purpose of their work, as their motivation has always been to beat Germany to the punch. Later that day, Winston Churchill remarks to the House of Commons, "We may allow ourselves a brief period of rejoicing, but let us not forget for a moment the toil and efforts that lie ahead. Japan, with all her treachery, greed, remains unsubdued, and so the atomic work continues." Back on Okinawa, the carnage is staggering. For nearly 3 months, the island is assaulted by a violent rain of steel. Devoid of trained pilots, Japan results in wide-scale kamikaze attacks. The Imperial Army also terrorizes the local civilian population with vicious propaganda predicting American savagery, forcing mass suicides. War planners shudder at what this foretells for Operation Downfall and search for an alternative to invasion. July 16, 1945, 5:30 a.m., White Sands Proving Ground, New Mexico. The quiet of the pre-dawn is shattered by a massive explosion and flash of light so intense that it shifts colors 100 miles away. The Trinity test results in the world's first nuclear explosion, the repercussions of which permeate global politics this very day. Years later, on the moment of the blast, Robert Oppenheimer remarked, "We knew the world would not be the same." And then he says, "I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty. And to impress him, he takes on his multi-armed form and says, 'Now I become death, the destroyer of worlds.'" I suppose we all thought that one way or another. But there was no time for further reflection. Quickly, bombs are made ready, and the Allies demand Japan's unconditional surrender. August 6, 1945, 11:16 a.m. 80,000 people instantly cease to exist. Hiroshima is virtually wiped off the map. In some instances, only shadows remain where people stood. President Truman promises a rain of ruin from the air, the like of which has never been seen on this earth. Japan is unmoved. August 8, 1945, the Soviet Union invades Japan. The empire teeters on the verge of surrender, but military leaders are undeterred. Surrender is incompatible with Bushido Samurai Code. August 9, 1945, 11:02 a.m. Another 80,000 people instantly cease to exist. What is left of Nagasaki smolders in small piles of rubble. Incredibly, Japanese leaders are still deadlocked. Only divine intervention in the form of Emperor Hirohito persuades them to accept the Allies' terms. August 15th, 1945, 12 noon, Japan Standard Time, the Jewel Voice broadcast plays Hirohito's imperial rescript on the termination of the war, announcing Japan's unconditional surrender. The world responds with 2 days of unbridled celebration. March 9th, 1974. Major Yoshimi Taniguchi of the Japanese Imperial Army, now a bookseller, flies to Lubang Island in the Philippines. There, he issues surrender orders to Lieutenant Hiro Onada, who had been holding out in the jungle. As Onada's superior officer in 1944, Taniguchi finally convinces Onada the war is indeed over. The last Japanese soldier from World War II ceremoniously relinquishes his sword. Incredibly, 9 months later, on December 18, 1974, one final soldier, a Taiwanese private who had been serving with the Imperial Army, is arrested on Indonesia's Morotai Island. Now almost 30 years since Japan's surrender. Only then did World War II end as a reality in the world's collective consciousness and become a universal memory. Closing the book on the story of the war's ending. The ending that started with the jubilation celebrated 70 years ago today.
We have a couple of special presentation of excerpts from historical documents and speeches that tell the story of VJ Day as it unfolded. Now, the full texts are all available on Michigan WWII Memorial.org, and we encourage you to read them there. I have another story. This is a short one. On the battleship Missouri that was in Tokyo Bay that accepted the surrender, the famous picture of the Japanese leaders surrendering to MacArthur and Nimitz and the whole Allied entourage. On board the USS Missouri was Nathan Luderman. That was my father's uncle. He was a seaman on the ship, and I didn't know my uncle. He died when I was a very young child, but some of my father's family members told the stories that he told of that day being on the ship for such an important generational changing event. All right. Our first speaker, Christine Gregg. On March 25th, 1945, a Farmington Hills woman heard what sounded like a pistol firing on an otherwise quiet Sunday afternoon. She went to her window and saw a small bonfire burning in a neighbor's field. The neighbor, John Cook, later found some debris which was subsequently identified as part of a Japanese Kugo weather balloon bomb. Weather balloon bomb. The world's first ever weapon possessing intercontinental range. The Japanese balloon strikes on North America were at the time the longest range attacks ever conducted in the history of warfare, a record which was not broken until the 1982 Operation Black Buck raids during the Falklands Islands War. As the state's legislator from the district that was attacked by the Empire of Japan, it is fitting, therefore, that Representative Christine Gregg of Michigan's 37th District, which comprises Farmington and Farmington Hills, will read a portion of the surrender demands the Allies made of Japan in the summer of 1945. Please welcome Christine Gregg.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the honor to come and participate in this event. And I wanted to let you know that my middle son, Andy, is actually living in Japan now. And without the efforts of our veterans, without this victory in World War II, that would not have been possible. So thank you, veterans. The proclamation defining terms for Japanese surrender, also known simply as the Potsdam Declaration, issued at Potsdam, Germany, July 26, 1945. We, the President of the United States, the President of the National Government of the Republic of China, and the Prime Minister of Great Britain, representing the hundreds of millions of our countrymen, have conferred and agreed that Japan shall be given an opportunity to end this war. The full application of our military power, backed by our resolve, will mean the inevitable and complete destruction of the Japanese armed forces, and just as inevitably, the utter devastation of the Japanese homeland. The time has come for Japan to decide whether she will continue to be controlled by those self-willed militaristic advisors whose unintelligent calculations have brought the Empire of Japan to the threshold of annihilation, or whether she will follow the path of reason. Following are our terms. We will not deviate from them. There are no alternatives. We shall brook no delay. We call upon the government of Japan to proclaim now the unconditional surrender of all Japanese armed forces and to provide adequate assurances of their good faith in such action. The alternative for Japan is prompt and utter destruction. Thank you.
Please welcome back Rob Price, Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency.
President of the United States, Harry S. Truman, White House radio address to the nation, August 6, 1945. 16 hours ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima and destroyed its usefulness to the enemy. It is an atomic bomb. It is a harnessing of the basic powers of the universe, the force from which the sun draws its power. That power has been loosed against those who brought war to the Far East. The battle of the laboratories held fateful risk for us, as well as the battle of the air, land, and sea. We have now won the battle of the laboratories as we have won the other battles. We are now prepared to obliterate more rapidly and completely every productive enterprise the Japanese have above ground in any city. We shall destroy their docks, their factories, and their communications. Let there be no mistake, we shall completely destroy Japan's power to make war.
Next is Dustin Rice, representing the next generation of individuals who will carry on the legacy of the greatest generation. I'd like to introduce Dustin Rice at Michigan State University, studying international relations. When Dustin was 14 years old, he went on an honor flight Michigan trip to escort World War II vets to Washington, D.C. to see their national memorial. Since then, he has acquired an impressive collection of World War II memorabilia, which he has formally displayed at the American Legion posts on Veterans Day. His love of country and his respect for our veterans began early and is sure to continue throughout his life. He will be reading excerpts from Japanese Emperor Hirohito's imperial rescript on the termination of the war, announcing Japan's unconditional surrender, broadcast to the people of Japan August 15, 1945. Dustin Rice.
Thank you. As a student of international relations, I would like to urge you to listen to this speech and to think about how far relations between Japan and the United States have come. From Emperor Hirohito, August 15, 1945. To our good and loyal subjects, after pondering deeply the general trends of the world and the actual conditions obtaining in our empire today, we have decided to effect a settlement of the present situation by resorting to an extraordinary measure. We have ordered our government to communicate to the governments of the United States, Great Britain, China, and the Soviet Union that our empire accepts the provisions of their joint declaration. The war situation has developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage, while the general trends of the world have all turned against her interests. The enemy has begun to employ a new and most cruel bomb, the power of which to do damage is indeed incalculable, taking the toll of many innocent lives. Should we continue to fight, it would result in the obliteration of the Japanese nation. The hardships and suffering to which our nation is to be subjected hereafter will be certainly great. We are keenly aware of the inmost feelings of all of you, our subjects. However, it is according to the dictates of time and fate that we have resolved to pave the way for a grand peace for all the generations to come, by enduring the unendurable and suffering what is unsufferable. Let the entire nation continue as one family from generation to generation, ever firm in its faith in the imperishability of its sacred land, and mindful of its heavy burden of responsibility and of the long road before it. Thank you.
My friend Art Fishman, fireman, first class Art Fishman, is a veteran of both the U.S. Army Air Corps Cadet Program and the U.S. Navy. Serving on the USS Robinson in the Pacific as part of the 5th Fleet, the USS Robinson served at Morite, Leyte, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, Shanghai, and other locations in the Pacific Theater. On September 2nd of 1945, the USS Robinson was on patrol in Subic Bay, part of the contingent protecting against revenge attacks, while the USS Missouri, where my father's uncle was on board, was anchored in Tokyo Bay to accept Japan's formal surrender. Despite the announcement of Japan's intentions, the United States was taking no chances. Renegade forces had already attempted several coups, and the Emperor recorded his message to the people of Japan. Art Fishman and his fellow sailors stood on guard while, on behalf of the United States, his superior officer, General Douglas MacArthur, accepted surrender documents from the Empire of Japan. 70 years later, Art will return the favor and read a portion of General MacArthur's opening remarks at that ceremony. Go get him, Art.
Can you hear me? We are gathered here representatives of the major warring powers to conclude the solemn agreement whereby peace may be restored. The issues involved, divergent ideas and ideologies have been determined on the battlefields of the world, and hence are not for discussion at this time or debate. Nor is it for us to meet representing, as we do, majority of the peoples of the earth in a spirit of distrust, malice, or hatred, but is rather for us, both victors and vanquished, to rise to a higher dignity which alone benefits the sacred purpose we are about to serve, committing all of our peoples unreservedly to faithful compliance with the undertaking they are here formally to assume. It is my earnest hope, and indeed the hope of all mankind, from this solemn occasion, that a better world emerge out of the blood and carnage of the past, a world founded upon faith and understanding, a world dedicated to the dignity of man and the fulfillment of the most cherished wish for freedom, tolerance, and justice. Douglas A. MacArthur, USS Missouri, September 2, 1945. Military, being the youngest ranked man here, I salute all of you today. Good luck.
Next, L. Brooks Patterson. From November 1962 through November 1964, now Oakland County Executive L. Brooks Patterson was known as United States Army Specialist 4th Class L. Brooks Patterson. So let's hear a big cheer from you guys. The bottom line is L. Brooks gets it. He summed it up best in his endorsement letter for this project when he said, quote, "We owe it to Michigan's greatest generation to ensure their sacrifices are never forgotten," unquote. So Brooks, welcome the opportunity to help us be here today and mark the end of the greatest conflict of the 20th century. Brooks will read excerpts from President Harry Truman's speech of September 2nd, 1945, reflecting on the formal surrender ceremony conducted earlier that day and the peace that would follow.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to be here to celebrate this day. I remember when the war ended, I was old enough to ask my dad why were all the neighbors honking their horns. And he said, the war is over. And that prompted us to get in our car with the flag, and we drove around for like an hour and a half, and celebrating the end of this particularly horrific war. You heard what General MacArthur said on September 2nd. This is what Harry S. Truman said as president that same day, September 2nd, 1945. The thoughts and hopes of all America, indeed all the civilized world, are centered tonight on the battleship Missouri. There, on that small piece of American soil, anchored in Tokyo Harbor, the Japanese have just officially laid down their arms. They have signed terms of unconditional surrender. Our first thoughts, of course, thoughts of gratefulness and deep obligation, go out to those of our loved ones who have been killed or maimed in this terrible war. On land and sea and in the air, American men and women have given their lives so that this day of ultimate victory could actually come and assure the survival of the civilized world. No victory can make good their loss. It is our responsibility, ours the living, to see that this victory shall be a monument worthy of the dead who have died to win it. This victory is more than just that of arms alone. From our war plants rolled out tanks and planes which blasted their way to the hearts of our enemies. From the shipyards sprang the ships which bridged all of the oceans of the world for our weapons and supplies. From our farms came the food and fiber for our armies and many navies and for our allies in all corners of the earth. From our mines and factories came the raw materials and the finished products which gave us the equipment to overcome our enemies. But back of it all were the will and support of the determination of a free people who know what freedom is, who know that it is worth whatever price they had to pay to preserve it. Now let us set aside VJ Day as one of the renewed consecration to the principles of the spirit of liberty, the freedom of the individual, and the personal dignity of the man which have made this our strongest nation on earth, and which in this war we have striven so mightily to preserve. Those principles provide the faith, the hope, and the opportunity which help men to improve themselves. From this day we move forward. We move forward to a new era of security at home. And with the other United Nations, we move toward a new and better world of cooperation, of peace, and international goodwill cooperation. Those were Mr. Truman's remarks as Mr. President when the war ended this very same day that MacArthur took the official signing of the surrender of Japan. Just a couple tidbits. You all got the program, same program I have. And that picture of that sailor kissing that nurse is embodied in about a 20-foot statue down in Sarasota, where I go in the wintertime with the kids. And it's a perfect replica of this, and it's right there on Highway 41. Can't miss it. And so I stopped one time to read the inscription and just figure out who these guys were. Well, it turns out they didn't know each other, and after this one rather passionate kiss, they never got together again. I thought I'd give you that footnote. In one thing, what's that? Oh, right. Well, I was going to introduce you to kissers. I've done much more. Why don't you get a room? Oh, no, never mind. Ladies and gentlemen, to reenact that moment on the New York Main Street, please welcome our. Do we have names there for the kids? There we go for it.
We're going to introduce Chris and Paul Held, recreating the famous VJ Day kiss.
Everybody get your cameras ready.
Beautiful, beautiful.
It is flown by Dr. Brian Smith, president of the National Tuskegee Airmen Museum. It will be accompanied by 3 motor gliders from Team Tuskegee, flown by lead pilot Steve Dogbag Tupper, with co-pilot 13-year-old Nicholas FOD Tupper, Chris Restart Felton in the number 2 position, and Mark Frenchie French in the number 3 position. The T6 should appear first and circle the site in what is known as a slow patrol. He will be joined by the motor gliders, who will do several formations, including fingertip and right echelon and trail, and maybe we'll be able to easily identify what those are. I just received a document with diagrams and additional details, and I'll be doing some narrating. Presenting our wreath will be U.S. Army Air Corps B-17 Navigator, Second Lieutenant William Rosnai, European Theater of Operations, Motor Machinist Mate, Second Class Petty Officer Andy Cobro, Pacific Theater of Operations.
Let me get this wreath.
Left, right, please. Ready. Aim. Fire. Aim. Fire. Aim. Fire. Half left, please. Reset. On.
Moment of silence.
And salute.
We remember those who didn't make it home. Those who are serving today to keep us free. Thank you.
Wasn't that awesome?
Color, military.